Good morning, everybody. This is Carrie Guest with Strategicom, and we are back with another edition of our podcast. Today, we are talking to a couple amazing millennials in the data center space. Both have very different careers and very different paths to their careers. And so, we talked a good bit in some of our podcasts about diversity, and diversity really is a lot more than hiring somebody of a, different race, a different social upbringing, a different everything. It also really includes diversity of thought. And so I'm really excited to have some of our younger next generation coming up to talk to ourselves. So I'm going to let them each introduce themselves. Bill, you want to start?
Absolutely. Wow, you set the bar really high. Amazing millennials. I kind of like that. I'm Bill Kleyman. I'm the EVP of Digital Solutions over at Switch. And I get a chance to work on some of the most amazing technology data center solutions in the industry, with basically the goal of building a wonderful digital sustainable future.
So maybe just tell people a couple sentences about who Switch is and what they do.
Absolutely. So Switch is, like I said, a technology organization that happens to own and build some of the world's best data center facilities. And we really focus on creating a karmic balance in the industry, right? Do good for the world, the world will do good for you. Our unique approach to creating hyperscale data center ecosystems comes from patented designs, a unique approach to making sure that we have a really positive impact on the environment, to make sure we're sourcing green energy, and really whatever savings, whatever we can pass on back to the customer, whether small or huge, we do that across the entire United States.
Awesome. Thanks. Kacey, you're up. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so my name is Kacey Armstrong, and I work for a company called Vertiv. And this company is a global company that provides mostly products and services that go into data centers. So all your UPS, HVAC, server racks, and then the actual services of keeping data centers running is what Vertiv is known for. However, my specific line of business is building modular data centers for Vertiv, which has been a new line of business. And I kind of helped start this group within the company. And it's been quite a wild ride, but extremely fun. My background is in construction, which we can probably get into later. But my path in getting to Vertiv has been not straight. And being in construction on data centers and all this has been a wonderful learning experience, but also extremely fun. So that's kind of my background.
Very good. Yeah. And that kind of speaks to I always love to hear somebody that has a very different story and a different path into the industry. And I think, your construction background is certainly unique in a couple ways. There's not a lot of women in construction to start with. And then certainly, turning that into a data center career, I think, there's a big misnomer out there that you have to code to be in this industry, or you have to be good at math, but there's a lot of ways to get here. So tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got where you are.
Sure. Yeah, it's been, it's definitely different. So I'm based in California, and as I was going through college, I was earning a degree towards physical therapy, actually. And I actually ended up getting my degree in physical therapy. But in order to get myself through college, I was working for a local kind of small shop general contractor that did a commercial construction in the Bay Area. And I really fell in love with construction. There's something very rewarding about taking something from what's on a print and actually delivering that and seeing that whole process through. And so I fell in love with it. And after college, I had to make a tough decision to either, go on the path of what I had gotten my degree in or to stick with construction. I kind of rise through the ranks in the construction world. And because I loved that and because I'd grown into that company, I decided to stick with that. From there, I got recruited to a larger general contractor within the Bay Area where I got to work on some amazing tech projects, the Apples, the Googles, all your tech companies in the Bay Area and help bring together a lot of lab spaces and office spaces and all that. So being in that industry was super fun, and it was very creative, and the project management of it, learning that from, nothing and delivering a project was definitely very rewarding. And so from there, just through the different people that I got to know and through a lot of connections, someone called me up one day and said, "Hey, we're starting a new line of business at Vertiv. It's construction based. It's modular data centers. Would you be interested in helping kind of put together a team, put together processes, and start develop what we have going on here?" And I said, sure. So I jumped over to Vertiv about 2 years ago, and I haven't looked back. It's been great. The modular data system, or actually data centers as a whole, is not something that's typically thought about when you're doing construction. You're usually thinking about, your labs and your office spaces. But the actual infrastructure of data centers and learning about that is so complicated and involved. There's so much to learn. And every day I feel like I'm learning on this. And I definitely don't feel stagnant, which I think is something that we all look for, especially millennials. We're always constantly trying to grow and develop. And I feel like I found that in the data center world because it's a constantly changing environment.
Yeah, I think, just the entire IT industry as a whole, most everybody that's in this industry, from construction all the way through programming, that's one of the biggest draws, is that it is a constantly changing environment, and you get exposed to so many other parallel environments that if you kind of don't love what you're doing, there's a million other places to go, and there's crazy room for growth all the way through, whether you started out with a degree in IT or not. And so, Bill, you actually have an IT degree. You started out through that path and then continued your education. But tell us a little bit about kind of what your day-to-day job is and what you do for
Sure.
Switch.
Before I do, I just kind of want to piggyback a little bit on what Kacey was talking about. And I was listening to you, Kacey, and I was just, kind of beaming with pride that I get a chance to work with you, in this industry. So everyone listening to this podcast, I want you to know how special, what Kacey's actually doing really is in the industry, because all cards on the table, all three of us are a part of an absolutely wonderful organization called the IMasons organization, where we strive to bring equality, diversity, and inclusion, and obviously scholarships and all of that to just a lot of different kinds of people in the technology space. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Kacey and I are a part of a resource group that actually helps specifically cater to millennials and Gen Zs. And we're both, I'm the chair. Kacey's my vice chair, and we really try and get the message out to people, that the data center industry, this infrastructure, this technology space is absolutely enlightening. It's fast paced, always changing, always moving. I mean, we take a look at all the stuff that's happening in our industry, and we are all of us are walking, talking data generating engines that absolutely leverage technology tools every single day. Now, I want to backpedal a little bit and tell you why what Kacey's doing is really, really special, especially in the construction space. Working with other young people in STEM, in high school and junior high, and everybody listening, if you've got a young person in your life, it could be anybody who's looking into the technology space. It's not just about when a data center or infrastructure facility is done, right? A lot of times we have that misconception of, I'm going to work in tech, or I'm going to go work in a data center or in the data center space or in technology. And you think it's a completed, done building, lights are on, flashy, blinky thingies. You can go in there and do some work. What Kacey is effectively doing is saying, right, but there's also an entire part, the math, the science, the physics, the architecture, the building, the planning of a building, right? There's nothing there. It's a wide open field of prairie grass or sand, whatever you want it to be. And I'm going to build something that's not just going to have office chairs or, some kind of a manufacturing machine. It's going to house digital infrastructure for organizations that oftentimes, if you ask them, can this stuff go down? They're going to say, No, it's critical to me. So what Kacey's effectively doing, and this is for anybody listening that wants to go to this area, she's building this and designing these kinds of environments, data center environments, modular ecosystems from the ground up. And of course, it's going to be involved. And of course, there's partnerships and conversations. Kacey and my organization, Vertiv and Switch, work closely together to make these kinds of facilities possible. But that's so cool, Kacey, because you start literally from scratch and going into all these different kinds of locations. And as a young person, inspiring them to have the same vision that you have for a facility once it's going to be finally built. So I personally think that's really, really special. And I think everyone needs to take note that if you're looking to get into this space, it's not just about a facility or a data center that's done, right? There's so much that has to go into other pieces of it.
That's a huge reason we've included the trades in this whole podcast series because, without trades, literally none of us have a job because nothing gets built, nothing gets, put into place. And there's a lot of apprenticeship programs. There's a million ways to get into this space that aren't just somebody waking up one day and say, hey, I want a degree in IT. I'm going to go work at a data center. First off, not everybody even knows what a data center is, but I will say this, they are ubiquitous. And without them, nobody does anything. Your iPhones don't work. Your TV doesn't work. Broadcast doesn't work. There's a million things that just don't happen. So from the construction side, I think that's absolutely important. And then Bill, if you could touch a little bit on after it's built, what the, what goes on the inside.
So this goes back to your original question, and I totally dovetailed and gave Kacey some well-deserved praise. You're very welcome. So I did get an IT degree. I got an undergrad in network engineering, network communications management. Then after that, I was a studious individual. I went and got an MBA concentrating in marketing, and then one more degree, another master's in information security. So I love tech, and a big part of what I do every single day is not just work from a technical perspective. I mean, I've got my own little lab at the house. I've got a 3/4 rack that's full up with gear that I get a chance to play with, my own little private cloud. And so a part of what I get a chance to do is discuss and operate and deploy some of the most advanced technologies in our industry, supporting everything from AI, machine learning to vast filer and data islands, and environments that are supporting, a lot of the movie productions that you might be seeing out there. I could point to the servers that are running them. So my upbringing came from a cloud virtualization and data center architecture perspective, but much more so, unlike Kacey, when it was actually done, right? I had a building, I had a general idea of what needs to go in there, and I'm the guy that would come in and help an organization design their digital ecosystem, whether it's hybrid, multi-cloud, private cloud on premises. I had a chance to really understand the dynamics between what an organization requires from a business perspective and how they can simply translate that to both today and future technology needs. And I did that for numerous years, being able to talk about really complex topics and explain it to C-level people relatively simply helped me progress in my career pretty quickly. I was a CTO of a pretty sizable consulting company for a little while. They're the biggest Citrix partner in the country, actually, MTM Technologies. Then I got a chance to work at a company called EPAM Systems. They're still great friends of mine. This was about a year spent deep diving into the world of DevOps, DevSec, test ops, helping migrate crazy workloads into the cloud, so refactor, replatform, relicense, retire different kinds of apps. Crazy projects included actually migrating AS400 systems into Google Cloud and parts of SAP into a hybrid cloud environment spanning both AWS as well as Google Cloud. So that was an amazing experience that sort of abstracted the physical world and helped me live in the cloud a little bit. I came to Switch. It's going to be a year here pretty soon, because this organization is very, very special, right? Again, built on the foundation of karma, do good for the world, and the world will do good for you, on top of a very unique design in terms of how they deploy data centers. Again, a lot of patent solutions, and a lot of them specifically geared to benefit the customer as well as the environment, which is actually really, really cool. My day-to-day involves quite honestly, working with everyone from our facilities teams to our DevOps development teams, to our branding and marketing teams, and also being the guy that gets the chance to go out there and speak about this stuff all over the world and get a chance to get people just as excited about the tech space as you clearly can see that I am. But then outside of this, I'm a writer, blogger, author. So, Information Week, Dark Reading, Data Center Knowledge, Data Center Frontier. I was the keynote speaker at AFCOM Data Center World. And, it's not just, I'm not waving the Bill Kleyman flag. It's just a piece of enthusiasm that I get a chance to share with people about what's happening in our industry. And one of the things that I love to talk about is not just about how far we've come, but much more so getting to people to think about how far we're going in this space. And I get a chance to do that with Switch. Really cool things that we get a chance to do, impact all sorts of different kinds of customers. And then outside of that, an organization that clearly focuses on diversity and inclusion. And I just want to kind of mention that really, really quick, because I was at a D&I event with the IMasons out in, I think it was in San Francisco. No, was it? It was London. Oh my God, I know San Francisco. And one of the things that was actually mentioned up on stage as far as diversity and inclusion is concerned, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well, is diversity is being asked to the dance, inclusion is being asked to dance. And I found that to be really, really fascinating. And what's great about what we're talking about, and what Kacey, myself, and Carrie, you certainly do as well, is you get people to become a part of this industry to get excited. So that's sort of my day-to-day. That's kind of what I do and where I try and impact the industry. But once a data center is built, right, it's gloves come off. You can literally do anything that you want as an industry, whether you're a small IT organization or a large, massive multi-rack organization as well that's trying to provide some kind of a service. What I've learned is that as a partner, a business partner, some of the most impactful success stories that I've run across are the guys and gals that have a half a rack in my data center, that don't have a lot of gear, that then come back to us and say, you make us feel like the Facebooks and the Googles of the world because of the kind of underlying infrastructure that you provide from us. And that's, guys, that's what I do every single day, is change the paradigm on how organizations can go to market with some of the most advanced and impactful technologies that are available in the industry.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that, the data center is most certainly an ecosystem. And once it's built, that's certainly not the end of the day. There's, constant upgrades. There's constant change. There's constant, you were talking some about cloud, and I can absolutely say for people in my generation, cloud didn't exist. Well, it did, but in a very, very different format. It was not GUI, and we had some shared resources, which kind of paved the way, but it certainly wasn't the cloud we know today. And Kacey, you talked a little bit about doing modular data centers, and let's talk a little bit about the, modular data centers, why they're important now, and edge compute, and kind of help people understand. I think there's also a little bit of a misnomer that a lot of the data center careers are really stuck in the key data center markets like Silicon Valley and Dallas and Virginia. But, we know that's not true. So why don't you tell us a bit about where you think the modular market is going?
Yeah, it's interesting. And we're constantly having this conversation within our line of business about the future of modular data centers. For me, as someone who can take a big step back and look at what we're doing, I think it's amazing. And the reason why is because what modular data centers do is that it gives you a fast turnaround on a data center when a customer needs a data center really quickly. So our timeline to build a modular data center is half, if not more, than actually doing a ground up type data center build. And what's even more amazing about modular data centers is that you can actually add on to them. So instead of building a building and then adding on a second building, with modular, we can build. So if you actually think in your mind right now about what is a modular data center, think about a shipping container. So what we do is we employ factories around the world to build essentially a glorified shipping container where we put all of the equipment and all the materials that are needed to run a full-blown data center. It all gets built in a factory. And then we take that shipping container and we ship it to a site. And once it gets onto site, we make all the civil connections, all your electrical, mechanical, plumbing connections onto the site, but it's already there. So those connections are super fast and the turnaround is really quick. So if you take one of those containers and you add on 10, 20, 30, and you connect them all up, you can make that data center as big as you want to make it. You can plan for the present and then, plan for the future of what that's going to look like if you purchase more land or grow that, the footprint of what you want your data center to look like at a later time. So what's amazing, like I said, what's amazing about modular data center is the fact that the timeline is so quick and the turnarounds is so fast for companies who really need the cloud really quickly. Of course, that there is the competition of the actual ground up data center, and there's a lot of benefits to both, but that's why I really like the modular data center. I think it's pretty amazing. I hope that there's a great future for it.
As we get to more edge compute, I don't know that everybody really understands the need for compute in literally every city that's out there. Yeah. And, that's a great way to start some of that. But
yeah. And the other thing about data centers is the utility to run a data center is extremely high, and also they run extremely hot, right? I mean, statistic out there that modular data centers are actually only running mostly at 80% of capacity, because if they go to 100%, they'll run way too hot and essentially blow up, right? So we're constantly trying to figure out areas and locations to not only reduce the cost of running a data center, but also to be able to run it at full capacity. So like you said, Carrie, we are deploying these data centers everywhere. I mean, worldwide, but also in locations that you wouldn't normally think, right? Because of those two factors, and for exactly what you just said, the need for having a data center extremely close to wherever the company is being run, or the edge compute factor right there, right? They need data centers constantly. And that's what's great about the modular data center, is that you can provide that really quickly, and it doesn't require a whole bunch of site and civil works. It doesn't require a full-blown construction project. It's pretty much built for you, and then we just set it onto your site.
There's a huge kind of misnomer in the industry, and I talk about this a good bit. Everything is a tool in your toolkit, right? So, there's times that you might want to be in a colo. There's times you might want to build your own on-premise data center. There might be times where your on-prem is at capacity, but bringing in a container is another option for expanding that capacity. And, all of these are building blocks to get to the point where, Bill's kind of kicking in, where we're putting the information in and working with the information that sits inside. So it's all a place to get there.
I love the concept of modular.
Exactly right.
And we take a look at the industry out there. So folks that are listening to this, a lot of times we run into the challenge of people not understanding how all of the stuff that they've got in front of them connects and what happens, right? When we get in a car, we understand that when we turn it on, there's a footprint, right? There's a carbon footprint. We're emitting some stuff into the air. So that's happening. When you're streaming Netflix, or in this case, I guess Disney Plus now, you don't necessarily know what's happening in the background. And I love using this example for people to get an idea that everything they do online has a footprint, right? A single Google search will power a 100-watt light bulb for 11 seconds. So there's a footprint. The point there is that something is happening somewhere. Every single time you search, you ask for something, every single time your phone connects or your watch is trying to process data. The other reality here is that we live in a world where slow is the new down. And latency is one of the biggest challenges that we're trying to overcome. And modular data centers allow you to be both flexible and scalable, because you can ship these anywhere in the world. A lot of times they come pre-configured with everything that you need inside of them, really minimizing the amount of stuff that you have to put inside and not have to buy additional components. Like Kacey was talking about, the simplicity in deploying a infrastructure that is designed to handle critical workloads. But the biggest point around these kinds of environments is that they are designed to allow you to process data, key services, and applications as close to you, the people listening, the user, as humanly possible, right? And that's where there's more connectedness. There's more people trying to come in. And the cool thing is that we're seeing these data center facilities become deployed in rural locations. And this is amazing because for healthcare, pharmaceuticals, being able to do things that we couldn't in the past. For example, being able to save people's lives because of the healthcare services we can bring closer to them. A lot of this has to be powered by an ecosystem, some cases modular data centers that are close to these people. So definitely a hot market. I just think in general, right, the data center industry is booming.
Yeah, I mean, there's literally no shortage of jobs in this industry. And, you know, as we talked about before, as the old folks like me hopefully get to retire someday, we want to make sure that that exposure is out there for new people and young people trying to jump back in and, you know, get in this industry. So let's talk a little bit about young folks and millennials in this industry. And Bill, you know, maybe you want to hit just a couple quick sentences on why your work in infrastructure masons is so important, and maybe just, you know, do a 2-minute tips for people that are looking to employ younger folks in the industry. You know, are degrees the most important thing you want to look for? Or are we, you know, is the industry moving towards what Apple's doing now with more skills-based recording?
Yeah.
And,
So,
you know,
all right. So this
bit.
has been an absolutely fascinating topic for me to learn about as well. So I'm a millennial, and I think the most successful people that I've worked at, especially my seniors and people who have guided me, are folks that don't try to manage me the way that they used to be managed, right? They'll understand my value, understand what motivates me, and try and build a career path and certainly an environment that allows me to grow and succeed. And Kacey, I feel like, you know, you're certainly in the same space. You've talked about this with me a bunch of times where you've been surrounded by people that have certainly enabled you. In my situation, and what I've seen is that I'm trying to apply the same knowledge to Gen Z, right? And in some cases, they're going to be 20 years old now and entering the workforce next year. And this is really the true untethered generation. There was a really interesting Pew research that said only 14% of U.S. adults had access to the internet in 1995. And in 2014, almost 90% had access. And millennials, we were some of the pioneers of the digital age. We witnessed the introduction and rise of social media, the IMs, the DMs, the smartphones and search engines, the mobile revolution. Gen Z did not really witness these innovations, but they were born into it. Where there's some crazy interesting stats out there that saying 40% of Gen Zs would rather have working Wi-Fi as opposed to a working bathroom. But back to your original question, they are seeing some of the challenges that my generation is absolutely experiencing. And 75% of Gen Z saying that there are other ways of getting a good education other than going to college. And this is especially true knowing that 44% of recent college grads are employed in jobs that do not require a degree at all. And another 1 in 8 recent grads are unemployed entirely. So Gen Zs are coming at this from a different perspective. Why do I want this massive college debt? You know, if I want to go in the tech and IT industry, I can get really great hands-on experience, really great industry-focused certifications, and then be able to apply those to a well-paying job that's going to allow me to grow. The other really important thing to understand is that Gen Z and this new incoming generation is truly different. In the sense that they are going to be building a future around collaboration and balance and actually physical interaction. Another really interesting report also from Pew said that 74% of Gen Zs prefer to communicate face-to-face with colleagues. Now, when I read that, I was blown away. I know my generation is like, ew, don't call me, send me a DM. And then these guys are starting to sort of tip that sort of balance a little bit back into the right direction. And everybody listening to this is your new workforce. 61 million people that are going to be Gen Zs are actually going to be entering into the space and into the industry very, very soon. So you have to think of ways to manage them a lot more effectively. And in some ways, it's understanding their value, what motivates them, what drives them. And again, trying to help them become a valuable part of this industry. You know, it's fascinating to see how Gen Zs are going to be potentially different than my own generation, millennials. But I'm already seeing some really, really core differences. So I think my 2 minutes are up here. But I think the biggest takeaway is that don't come in and talking to a young person with any preconceived notions. And the most important thing you can do is start to talk to them about what's motivating to them, what drives them, what's their passion, how do they learn most effectively, and then build an environment that can simply support that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think Apple's news about no longer requiring degrees is important. They're looking more at skill-based hiring because, there's 12-year-old millionaires out there that wrote a crazy application, and there are different paths to learning. And so a few things, came to light throughout some of these podcasts. And if you haven't listened to the other ones, I'll just touch on a couple statistics. But right now, only 34% of men and 35% of women have a 4-year or better degree. So if you're at a company and the degree is the first thing you're looking at, you are missing out on 65% of the workforce. And just like Kacey, Kacey has a degree, but it's in something completely different. And she was absolutely able to learn and grow in her career and get a very successful job. So, Kacey, if you have anything you want to contribute to that, please do.
Yeah, I think Bill definitely touched on a lot of it, but one of the things that I find as a millennial entering a workplace that I did not go to school for, and even for anyone who does go to school, I mean, school doesn't always teach you the actual job at hand, right? And something that I talk to my leadership a lot about is setting up in mentorship programs within our company to really bring up our group, because honestly, I am one of the youngest people on my team right now. And it's a 20-year age gap between me and the next person on my team. And so I'm constantly,
oh, wow.
I'm constantly telling my leadership, hey, we need to fill this gap. Not only do we need to fill it between me and you, but also we need to start bringing in younger people right out of college, or people who are very interested in this field, and provide a place where they can come and they can learn and they can be mentored. And just the idea of people coming into an industry that is relatively new, if you really think about it, especially, building data centers. I mean, when I was going to school, that wasn't even something that, we talked about. It was more, construction was your basic office buildings, or all those type of things, but a data center build was not something that we even thought about in construction. And there's a lot to learn, and especially in data centers, there's so many moving parts. There's so much equipment, and whatever, when Bill and his team comes in, what we need to prepare for them to come in and start actually operating a data center. There's just so much. And we need to be able to fill the gap right now on how do we teach people my age, younger than me, or even a little bit older than me, to come and fill in that gap. And it's something that I'm really hoping that I can set up within my company, and even take into IMasons with Bill, because as Bill had said before, IMasons is what we're trying to create as a platform for people interested in the field, and who are interested in learning and growing within the field, but not specific to a company, right? So that's just my 2 cents on where I see the future and how we can get younger people into this field.
Yeah. I mean, you see all these videos coming out now. What is a data center? And then it's a video that shows somebody, transferring a file on an iPhone. But obviously, as we've talked about, there's a whole lot more than that. And from, a trades perspective, electricians and welders and pipe fitters, I don't think people realize the artistry that goes into all of those.
And we need them in the data
construction.
center. We need these folks in the data center. These people that can bend pipes, that can push conduit, that can help us design these environments. They're critical for the data center.
I was just going to say, for a lot of people that they're not sitting in a city that has a really great IT curriculum, or something, that leads them into what you think is a normal data center profession. The trades are amazing. You get out, you go through an apprenticeship program, you've got to learn skill, literally no debt or almost no debt. We've interviewed Salute Mission Critical that's doing the same thing with vets coming back from service. And, there's a million ways to grow into this industry. And, Kacey is a great example of that. Just, don't think that because you're not doing something computer related that there's not a place for you in this industry. There is literally a place for, I can't think of anything that's not related to this industry, right? Some of the big data center companies still have medical folks on staff. I mean,
yeah,
I can't think of one. There might be one, but I'm not thinking of it right off the top of my head. There's even cooks in a lot of the data centers. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say on top of what Bill had just said is that data centers does require a special skill set to even just to build them. And we need to get more people interested and learning about the skill set to actually build a data center. A lot goes into it, and it is awesome. The amount of knowledge and skill and work that goes into getting these data centers up and running so that they serve, these companies. It's pretty remarkable. And I honestly can't stress to anyone listening how exciting it is to finally get a data center up and running and sigh and say, okay, we did it, and we hand it over to the service team to actually run.
Yeah, and then if you get to go back in and watch all the blinky lights when it's actually in service and operating.
Really cool.
We talked a little bit about diversity and inclusion, kind of the generation gap. Closing
I think
remarks,
that
Bill?
this industry is not going to experience any slowing down. And when I was up on stage in 2019, it was the State of the Data Center keynote. Before I got a chance to leave, someone came up to me and asked me, will cloud kill the data center? It won't. Obviously, it won't. Every single metric is showing that. I've got a bombshell
cloud is
for
a
you.
data center.
Guess what cloud is? It's a data center. And you remind them that people like Google and Facebook and Amazon and Microsoft, their data center operators, they just push their services as a forefront vision to what people see in the market. But honestly, they're operating data centers. To that point, this industry is not going anywhere. And if you're listening to this, you don't have to be a network engineer. You don't have to be somebody who is a Cisco certified person. If you are skilled in a trade, whether it's, again, electrical, pipe fitting, whatever the case might be, there's a solid opportunity for you to be a technologist. Working with my facilities teams, I go to them and I tell them, you are technology experts, right? You've come from a variety of different kinds of industries, military, working on wind farms, and now you are working here at Switch. You're a technologist. You're a part of this digital infrastructure, and you're part of somebody who builds sustainable future. Anybody booming, we need young people. We need young, excited people that can talk all the way from seeing that prairie and the nothingness of open land to visualizing what a data center looks like, to people like me and others that help facilitate and put stuff into that data center, specifically, then just help support the vision of people and help people use these kinds of tools to do great things.
Well, as somebody that's old enough to have watched kids grow up, I can say it's a lot like watching your kid grow up and turning into a productive member of society.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to have stake in that whole entire process. Kacey, you got any closing remarks?
Yeah, I think kind of the elephant in the room right now is that I am a woman in construction, and I just wanted to kind of talk about that for a moment and encourage.
Yeah, please do. I said, please do.
Oh, yeah. So I want to encourage young women, but even women interested in the field. I have seen construction change for the better, and I am extremely optimistic of where it's going. And being in the Bay Area, it's all around tech and how can we make construction more techy to keep up with the companies that we're working with. And we're absolutely doing that. But on top of that, getting women into construction has been a lot more inclusive. And over the years, I see it every day. Yes, there are, still you've got a lot of older men that are working on site and you're working with constantly, but there are also a lot of young people getting into the industry as well who are aware that, we're all equal and we all are capable. And it's really encouraging to see people that I work with on a day-to-day basis are always encouraging me. And they never look at me like, oh, you're just a woman, he's sitting here or working on this project. I actually feel valued. And I just want to encourage more women to really consider the field of construction. For me, I find it really rewarding. There's the project management aspect of it is great, but also just like I said before, you're taking something from a piece of paper and you're actually an integral part of building that and making it something. And it doesn't matter what sex you are, that's a pretty amazing thing to do. So I'd like to, the stigma of only men being in construction, I just want to encourage more women to really consider it. And also on top of that, the data center field is this is the right time right now to get involved, as Bill had mentioned. And I would say if you're interested in construction, consider data centers. It's a great field to get started in and to start learning. And we'll see where it will be in the next 10 years, right?
Yeah. And just to put a little icing on what you just said, most of those men, middle-aged men, my age men, that are on these projects are dads. And in a lot of cases, when when I talk on these women's panels and, the fathers are the biggest voices in the room because they want a better life for their daughters and their nieces and the next generation coming up. So, don't be discouraged if you are the different one. I mean, are there jerks? Yes, there are jerks in every industry, but the amount of support I think that you find in tech as a whole, and certainly in this data center industry for every kind of diversity is out there. And if you're in a place where they're not fostering that, find another place because it's not hard to do. There's a lot of competition for the talent that's out there. And certainly, no shortage of places you can go.
Yeah.
So with that, I will say, Kacey, Bill, thank you so much for participating in this. I think there's some great information here to pay it forward a little bit. And for the rest of you listening in, thanks. And we look forward to the next podcast.
Thanks, Carrie. Thanks, Bill.